And so we could be doing those things, particularly for the immigrant population, but because we are not, we see otherness or differences. And this is, I will say, across all races.
It's a negative.
And we're like, oh, they're different. We don't do that bridge building, and I wish we did. I wish we did more to turn diversity into community.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on When Neighbors Talk. I am your host, Dana Tucker Davis, and here is where the community will come together to discuss issues and the problems that we are facing and solutions to those. We have guests that we welcome in our neighborhood, and today we're going to discuss immigration and the complications that immigrants face when moving and living in Georgia. Today, we're going to discuss that with our state representative, Marvin Lim. Mr. Lim, would you give us a little brief introduction of who you are and what your district or where your district is located?
Absolutely. I'm very happy to be here, Dana. I'm Marvin Lim. I am a state representative. I am an attorney, and I also, as a state representative, I represent most of unincorporated Norcross in Gwinnett County. It's really the line between DeKalb and Gwinnett. So Jimmy Carter Boulevard all the way up to Beaver Ruin Road. And I am myself an immigrant. I'm originally from the Philippines. I came to Atlanta when I was 7, so appropriate for today.
Very appropriate. And so when I first bought a house, I lived in what you would call your district. I lived up in off of Jimmy Carter.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
May I ask where?
Yes, it was a subdivision called Wedgewood. It's off of by the golf course.
Yes.
So anyway,
we're dealing with some HOA issues there, but we can get there later.
And I'm an HOA attorney, so isn't that wonderful? So, talk about immigration today. All right, so I'm going to read a statistic that we have, and we're going to talk about that. It says, according to American Immigration Council, about 11.6% of the state's residents are foreign-born, and 6.7% of its U.S.-born residents live with at least one immigrant parent. Immigrants make up 15.3% of Georgia's labor force and support the state's economy in many ways. They account for 22.4% of entrepreneurs and 23.5% of STEM workers and 15.7% of nurses in the state. So those are a lot of numbers, but it sounds like just those statistics alone that the immigrants in Georgia are contributing to our economy and our way of living, right?
That's absolutely correct.
What's the problem? Let's talk about it. So why are we shunning immigrants to Georgia? I can't talk about other states, but just Georgia, in your opinion.
In my very strong opinion, so much of it comes down to, say, look, we have cups in front of us.
Okay.
We know we did not make it, unless I did not know that. I certainly did not make it. It came from somewhere. So whether that is goods or wares or your food or certain services, it is coming from somewhere. And you just read off some amazing statistics about several of our industries that are very immigrant heavy, very important industries. We saw this during COVID. But the key is we don't appreciate that when we are eating our food or looking at the goods in front of us. We don't appreciate those contributions, even when you're reading those statistics. Because in so many ways, while immigrants are very visible, their contributions remain quite invisible. Again, we saw a little bit more of that during COVID. We saw their importance in our food and beverage, construction, manufacturing, certainly our healthcare. I was hopeful that we would continue that appreciation. We are in 2025, and I think there is conversely a lot of fear. And in this year, for so many people, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the other, in this case immigrants, has quite overtaken our ability to appreciate what is not immediately in front of us, but what is in every other way so clear, the contribution of our immigrant population. I cannot go by without mentioning the raids down in Hyundai.
Yes.
Right? And so that was something that the state of Georgia worked very hard to bring, including millions of dollars of tax incentives by our current governor, Governor Kemp. But the reality is that those jobs that they were seeking to fill could not be filled, at least immediately, by those who were already, whatever their status, already in the area.
So I thought about that too, because I serve on the Economic Development Board for the city of South Fulton, and we're trying to bring in business to Georgia so you can impact the economy positively. You can increase the tax revenues and coffers or whatever. So you have all that going on, but you have to balance it. If I know that I'm building something and the language for the instructions is not one that I speak, I need to have someone that can do that. And if we don't have the population here that can do that, I have to bring them in. But I don't think that we spend enough time combating some of these negative statements that are promoting fear of immigration and immigrants in our state and in our nation. But we'll move on to the next part of this conversation.
I would agree with that, for the record.
Yeah, and I just feel that that's part of it. I mean, there are things and factors that we're not touting, that we're not talking about. And I know that the area that your district is heavily immigrant populated, because I know where it is. And I know, where the services that we've had to help provide to persons that are residing there. So I know that you know. But let's talk about this, because this is the last episode of our podcast for the year. So in past conversations, we've talked about unemployment, some of the factors that are there. Of course, there's a sense of, where the jobs aren't available for us because someone else has them, right? And then you have issues about anxiety or, stress about, financial matters. And you have, the impact of COVID, on the market or on the lives of Georgians and others. And then you have, we talked about special needs and all those things. So now we're on this last conversation, and I think it's tied in to some of those topics, because most people move to America for what they think is a better way of living, right?
Yes.
And so that's what the American dream, you have this democracy, and it allows you to have some say-so in what happens. But are we actually fulfilling that or allowing these immigrants to attain this American dream right now?
It is really hard for a lot of people, including many, many immigrants, to attain that dream. Right now, for example, especially the last 50 years, in America, there's this idea that the way to do that was to build wealth through saving enough to buy a home. Statistics since COVID have repeatedly shown that first-time home buyers, including immigrants, many of whom are first-time home buyers, are vastly priced out of that market. You see it everywhere in Atlanta. And again, you used to live there. I happen to live in the most housing cost burdened part of Gwinnett County. And it is both the cheapest part as well as in so many ways, the most unaffordable parts, because to be clear, there is not affordable housing in that area.
There is not.
And so for many Americans, including and particularly immigrants, it is really difficult to do that traditional way of wealth building, but then B, when we're talking again about the contributions of immigrants to industries like agriculture, food, construction, manufacturing, all of the industries, healthcare, you mentioned nursing, a lot of Filipino nurses. It is really hard to build wealth from a lot of those positions. Some of them are higher paying than others, but it is quite difficult to actually not just have income, but transform it into wealth. That speaks to a lot of factors going on right now. I would attribute it in no small part, again, especially in Atlanta, to the ownership of our land and who our businesses are, because we have attracted a lot of investment, including a lot of foreign investment. That can be a very good thing. But again, are they taking care of their employees, their conditions? Are they paying living wages? Are they contributing to the local communities rather than just extracting from them? And if you look at in my area, I look at specific parcels in specific areas. You live near Dawson Boulevard, for example. Go onto there and see where the old Netherworld used to be.
Yes.
You live very close to that.
Yes.
Netherworld has moved. And that property has sat there for like 5 years, racking up lots of nuisances, essentially. But that person who owns that is making so much money. And I don't mean to pick on that one property, because this is happening certainly everywhere in my area, my district, but also in so many places. So there are, unfortunately, the haves and the have-nots. There are those that are working hard, that are making our goods and services, that are finding it really hard to build up so that then they can go out there and be the ones that own these properties, be the ones. And then there are those that are the haves that are, again, in my opinion, extracting heavily. And again, immigrants are particularly bearing that burden.
So I think that there are two factors that I wanted to kind of talk about that I think impacts the outlook and interaction with immigrants. One is discrimination. And some of the discrimination isn't as blatant, oh, you're from this country, you're from that country, you're black, you're white, you're another person of color. I think it's different discrimination, cultural discrimination. So you talked about housing. When I lived up there, I just felt like there was a sense of, so as a culture, there are some cultures that come here as immigrants, and where they're from, the family stays together, right? And then you also have people that discriminate differently when you have a lack of knowledge, right? So you're driving down, so in Gwinnett, sometimes when I drive down and these signs are in other languages, and I understand that they're marketing signs and they're marketing the people who they want to come to their stores or retail shops or whatever. I get that. But when I'm driving down the streets and you see all of these signs, and I'm like, oh, well, I may want to go buy something there. What is that? What are they advertising, right? And so unlike me, there are others who I feel discriminate because they don't know what the sign says, and they assume the sign isn't advertising chickens, 2 for $1, or hey, we have a sale on this, or we're offering, physical therapy, whatever. My mind doesn't go to anything negative, but there are other people that think that because it's in another language, that they're trying to hide something from me. And so then they discriminate. So I think the discrimination is playing a big role in this too.
I 100% agree, and your observations are so astute. So let me bring it back to what you said earlier. We're not doing enough to tout the contributions of our immigrants. And for the record, I believe we should value people regardless of their contributions, but let's be realistic. That's the way to say, hey, they are making a contribution. They are paying taxes. Most undocumented people themselves also pay taxes.
Taxes.
Right? But we are not doing enough to tout their even though it is around us. They are around us, even if we don't see their labor. The flip side of that same coin is the last 2 years have taken to saying diversity is not the same as community. And we in Atlanta, especially in Gwinnett, we are touting those diversity statistics. It's a little bit less popular in 2020, but we're still doing it, thankfully so. I love diversity. But just throwing a bunch of people with different norms together is bound to create tensions that will boil over into hate. And even if they don't boil over into, like, say, hate crimes or violence, these prejudices are multiplied, amplified, reified through these repeated interactions. And so what I feel that we need to be doing better is to build that community. I'll give you a big example that we've been dealing with in our neighborhood. In 2015, the state of Georgia basically allowed fireworks. We can talk about whether it's a good decision or not, right?
Yeah.
But there are cultures that love fireworks, and not just on the 4th of July, not just
every day of the week.
Right. And that creates tension. Now, so many of them, especially immigrants, don't know that there are these rules, because I've literally polled people and say, hey, did you know that there was this law, right? Because it's clear that it's not totally banned in Georgia, right? But we don't do the work of engaging and educating people. It's like we say, but we're both lawyers, ignorance of the law is not an excuse, right? But In some ways it should be.
It should
because
be.
if people don't know the norms. Now then, if there are people that know the norms and still violate those norms, then that's a different thing. Like we in my neighborhood, we like to talk to people right before going to civil, like code enforcement, for example, right? Especially this year, we're very hesitant to go to the criminal stuff because that will actually make things worse, including the very problem you're trying to stop. But my point here is we're not doing that bridge building. It sometimes happens in schools, but can we think, other than, I'll accept the refugees here because we used to have very robust refugee programs. If immigrants get here, who is engaging them on like, oh, these are the norms and these are the rules on noise? Because, and then engaging it from their community. You are an HOA attorney. How many HOAs do you know welcome newcomers, right? And so we could be doing those things, particularly for the immigrant population, but because we are not, we see otherness or differences. And this is, I will say, across all races.
It's a negative.
And we're like, oh, they're different. We don't do that bridge building, and I wish we did. I wish we did more to turn diversity into community.
So we have to talk about the solution. We've talked about the problem, we talked about the rhetoric that's out there. And we've mentioned, we need to do better with, how we combat it or how we engage and pull in the immigrant population. But let's talk about some other connections, because I think that we need to probably give me a ranking. I'm going to call out some things. Should there be classes for language classes? Because there is this whole thought, you're in America now, you need to learn English. And then we have this local outreach programs, which I think could teach some of the civic engagement or civic responsibilities. And then some cultural awareness, maybe through the schools or workplaces. And healthcare and housing are already issues for U.S. born citizens, so of course it's going to be an issue for immigrants, right? And then probably the last one I want you to rank is the effectiveness or openness for the visa programs or the programs to get Social Security cards or green cards or whatever. So we got language classes, outreach programs for civic engagement, cultural awareness, housing and healthcare, and visa. Would you rank? What would you rank as far as which one we should focus on that have the most impact on changing the lives of immigrants and how we engage with them here in Georgia?
That is a great question. I would say I'm going to combine a couple. The outreach and cultural awareness are important. We can take the cliche because it's true that education is the most important thing, but if you also take the other things you're talking about, language classes, and through my nonprofit, we teach English as a second language to adults in 4 of the schools in my cluster. Okay. So including Graves, which was very, very near where you used to live, right? And then we also help people through my nonprofit navigate healthcare. We do a lot of job development with them. The single greatest barrier to enrolling people in these things is the awareness and then the willingness to work within the community to engage people to enroll them in whether it's a language class program, whether it's Medicaid, SNAP, any of these things. Those are ultimately the most important because people need very basic things, including language classes, healthcare, et cetera, to be able to again, earn income, be able to contribute to society.
So you have the infrastructure, for lack of a better word, but you just need to get it out to the people.
So our method, especially this year, has been doing it neighbor to neighbor, because that then touches on the cultural awareness. Every time someone comes to me and says, I really want to do something about immigration, it's like, you should do some Know Your Rights trainings in your own neighborhood. Even if you have 0 immigrants, it's worth a lot to teach other people, engage other people on what basic First Amendment rights are, Fourth Amendment rights are to other people, because those around you, especially because, people do tend to cluster, right? Then if you can do that, you can call it a train the trainer approach, then you are likelier to reach those people with very valuable information that I don't care what we do a lot of door knocking, right? In my area, you can knock so many doors 10 times because we say meet people where they are. Well, we're literally meeting people where they are, but there's literally that physical barrier that because of these trust issues, especially this year, they're never going to open that door. They're going to open that door for a trusted messenger. They're going to open that door for the parent liaison at the school that they go to because they get services from them. So what can we do to equip literal neighborhoods with that information? Because we, and nonprofits will say this all day long, again, especially this year, it has been really tough. People have a huge need for immigration attorney or immigration legal help. And most of the people that I have engaged in my district, whether they come to me or I'm proactive about it, do not know here are some of the ones that are the most trusted, right? So if you're getting that feedback that like you think it's so obvious, but the people that actually need that, it's not obvious to them, then there's no amount of me, the not trusted messenger, the non-local, giving that information to them. But we can equip those who live in their neighborhoods to provide that information on healthcare, on immigration. And it's really, really hard work, but it's also the work of literally community building.
So you and I apparently can keep on talking about this because we have a passion for it. So I hear what you're saying, and I think that is a good solution. We just have to figure out how to train the trainers, train the neighbor, like the neighborhood cop. We have to get those programs or some kind of program like that initiated. And so hopefully next year this time, the conversation will be a little bit different. And then in 3-4 years from now, it will definitely be different because hopefully some other factors will be changing at that time.
Absolutely. So, and may I say one quick thing about that too? When we train your neighbors to do that work, that's when that hate starts to dissipate. That's when that when people have to work, studies have repeatedly shown when different people of different backgrounds have to work together towards a common thing. Because I've not met a single person in my district that likes crime, right? If they can work together on a common problem, studies repeatedly show that's when those biases go away. But we need to create or support the infrastructure to do that. It's not just words. Words are important. Yeah. But how do we do it at that very local level? So just wanted to put that in there.
We got to get it done. So before we go, how can our neighbors contact you? How can they reach your nonprofit? And just, kind of tell them that. And then I just want to say thank you for joining us and having this great conversation about immigration and the impacts it has in Georgia.
I'm so grateful to be here. You asked some really astute questions that I had actually not been asked.
Oh.
And I think it brought out some important things. So great job here.
Thank you.
So to reach me as a state representative, just Google Representative Marvin Lim. But if you want to email me, it's marvin.lim@house.ga.gov, 404-585-7715. It's Marvin Lim, FORGA, at Facebook, Instagram, and I guess we call it X now. And then my nonprofit is called the Lucky Shoals Community Association. So you can Google that or just email, say, luckyshoals@gmail.com. But you'll be able to find a wealth of information on our nonprofit as well.
Great. Well, it sounds like you're out there. So, there are multiple ways to get to you. Hopefully our viewers will actually reach out and get the conversation going to help the solution. So, again, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank our guests and everyone for watching us because we know that when neighbors talk, locals listen. And we hope to see you next time on When Neighbors Talk. Thank you.